Hey everybody, Ben for the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to the monthly meta. Every month-ish we get together and we have a look at two things in competitive Blood Bowl: what's legal and what's lethal. What that means is we're going to have a look at everything that's available for Blood Bowl right now. So if you are just starting out, you're just coming back, you want to expand your Blood Bowl horizons, we're going to run through exactly what's available and whether or not you need it. And the second part is we're going to have a look at the NAF tournament results for the last period, so the last couple of months, and see what teams are doing the best. So that's what's legal, that's what's lethal. So let's dive in to what's current in Blood Bowl. So let's start at the very top. Core rules and the basics for Blood Bowl. You're going to need the rulebook. Now, if you've got the old CRP PDF, if you used to play the 2016 edition, the rules are different. Not massively different. You've still got block dice, and the 2+ still fails 50% of the time. So core Blood Bowl isn't that much different, but there's a few things that have changed. So if you're just coming back to Blood Bowl, then actually get a rulebook, watch some of our games, sort of get the feel of the game. If you're joining us from Blood Bowl 2, you probably would have absolutely binged a bunch of games. I think the biggest thing to flag out is that there is a passing stat that didn't used to exist, so your gutter runners and your linemen on the Elven teams are not throwing around as much as possible. So there's a few core changes if you're just coming back. If you're just joining us, don't worry about it. Honestly, this is hands down the best edition of Blood Bowl that we've had. The last one was wonderful. This one's got a little bit more granular, and actually it's a really good time. And Blood Bowl 3 landing in the next month or so is going to mean that there will be players, and there'll be people being able to absolutely binge Blood Bowl the way it's meant to be played. None of this Blood Bowl 3, Blood Bowl 2 stuff that really is just not Blood Bowl anymore. It's changed. Blood Bowl 3 is going to land, and you'll be able to play Blood Bowl using the actual Blood Bowl rules, which will be great. So, if you are starting out or playing Blood Bowl, you will need the rulebook. And then, because it's Games Workshop, you'll need to look into, or at least have access to, on your phone, and I'll link it in the description below, the most recent Designer's Commentary, or FAQ, where they clear up and sometimes occasionally unclear certain things in the rulebook. If you want to know what's up, what happened in the last FAQ, we've got a video about it. Not a massive amount of change. I guess the petty cash change for League will have kicked in, but I would definitely grab the FAQ and have a read. There's no major differences, so you don't really need to worry too much. The majority of it will be when you get stuck, or when there's an edge case, or can I do this? The FAQ is slowly getting there with just being a really useful reference. So that's pretty cool too. Now, there are two Blood Bowl almanacs. Now, an almanac is basically a combined publication. The 2021 version had some rules from White Dwarfs and several of the Spike magazines together in one place. The 2022 version that just landed has got the most recent Spike, so the Amazon Spike and the Norse Spike, and 8 brand new star players to this edition of Blood Bowl. Now, we've got star player spotlights for those, and I think we've gone through the almanac as well to kind of talk through what we've got. But you've got Drawl and Dribble, the Lizardman Skink duo. We've got Troll-tastic Ripper. So the star player Troll Ripper is back for Goblins, not for Goblins, for Badlands Brawls and Underworld. You've got Nobbler Blackwart, the Chainsaw Goblin. You've got Scrapper Sorehead, the Pogo Goblin star player. They are both back as well. There's Bile Rot and Withergrass Double Draw, both Chaos star players too. So there's a good mix. And of course, we've got Puggy, the infamous Halfling star player. He's back, reasonably cheap and pretty effective. And then you've got what is probably going to be the most impactful release. It doesn't have a model yet. Is going to be Cindy Piewhistle. Now, Cindy Piewhistle was a Halfling star player that was introduced when the Halfling Spike came out a few years ago. Basically, Halfling star player that throws pies at people and is essentially a Halfling bombardier. 50k. So Cindy is back in the game, and at 50k, you've basically got an old world version of bomber Dribble Snot. So there's 50k bombers absolutely everywhere, which is quite an interesting situation. So look out for that as you go forward with star players and at tournaments, because there is a bit of a bomb frenzy going on at the moment, but it's still Blood Bowl. And talking of star players, we've got places for you to go with more teams and more star players. So the core rulebook has got 21 teams in it and 24 star players, but there's more out there for you to play in Blood Bowl, and it's very easy to get. So there are 5 different Spike magazines that are out now, and a Spike magazine is a thin book. It's like a codex. You've got your team rules in it. You've got your star players that come with this edition in it. You've got some special narrative bits and some narrative fun rules as well for you to choose and use. I really like the Spike magazines. They're one of my favourite things that they do for Blood Bowl. But I do have to say, Games Workshop are doing a really good job providing the rules for your teams. If you pick up a box of Amazons or Norse, the rules for the team, including the team's special rules, are in and on the back of the instruction book. So if you want to run a Norse team, you want to run an Amazon team, go buy a box of Norse at Amazon because the rules are right in there. And Games Workshop are putting the rules for the star players in the star player boxes. So if you buy one of the new star players, you get the rules right there with it. And also they're available for download from the Warhammer community. So actually, if you want to play Norse or Amazon, or you just want to run one of their star players, you just have to buy it or go to the website and download the PDF or pick up the Norse box, and the Norse team rules are in there. So the Spike magazines you don't need. If you want to run one of the newer teams, you just pick up the box and play with it. I do recommend the Spike magazines though. They're a good read, they're fun, they're good reference, they're just really good. Now, that's a great way to add a few of those teams. So Necromantic, Nobility and Black Orc are in the core rulebook, but for Khorne, Norse and Amazons, picking up the Spike magazine is a great way to make sure you've got all the rules right there and just a bit of fluff to go with it. There is a Team of Legend PDF on the Games Workshop website. Again, that's linked below, and that's got the 4 remaining unreleased teams in Blood Bowl. So the 4 teams that have not been reimagined for this edition. So High Elves, Chaos Dwarves, Tomb Kings, and Vampires. 4 teams still outstanding. They did Norse and Amazons last year. Fingers crossed they'll do 2 or 3 of the older teams this year. Now, the rules for those teams are all available by that PDF, the Teams of Legend PDF. The thing is, there is no Games Workshop team available for those. Not really. You can probably get one on eBay, but there's a ton of third-party teams. So if you're thinking about playing a High Elf team or a Vampire team, you won't be able to get one from Games Workshop. So you won't be necessarily able to support your friendly local gaming store, but we do have a top 5 list and we're working our way through every team. So especially the Teams of Legend, if you want to know what the top 5 Vampire alternative teams are for you, we've got a video covering that, so you can go straight away and see if one of those Vampire teams that we suggest fit nicely with you. Okay, that's the core teams and star players from Games Workshop. The rulebook is a great place to start. The Spike magazines you don't need because the rules are in the box. Whether it's a star player or the team, the rules are in the box for those. And if you want a Vampire team and a High Elf team, you can go and get the Teams of Legend PDF download for that as well. So really low point of entry for Blood Bowl. The rulebook, and then all of this stuff is available online for you to get. Now, before we kind of move on and delve into the other bits, actually, if you want to know the team stats, if you want to know how a team operates, we've got the resources for you on that channel, on this channel as well. But more particularly, if you want a roster builder, just go to our website and look at whatever our most recent or current upcoming tournament is. So we've got Beachhead coming up in February. If you're not coming down, do come along. You can just grab a copy of the Beachhead roster builder and you've got basically everything in there. All the rosters, all the star players. And we're definitely not the only people that do it. Blood Bowl community, there's links for that as well. So if you want to get hold of the rules for the Blood Bowl team, you're going to be able to find them very easily. That's the other great thing about Blood Bowl. Now, there's one more team we've not mentioned, and I absolutely love them, and that is the NAF Slann team. So Slann are space frogs. They used to exist in the old world in Warhammer, and then they slowly got turned into just big space wizard frogs, which is fine. But there is a frog people team that got turned into the Kislev team on Blood Bowl 2. So if you like jumping around the place, then Kislev/Slann are a really fun alternate roster, and you'll see that be eligible in most leagues and most tournaments if you're going to a tournament for Blood Bowl as well. So the starting place is the rulebook, and you've got all this choice of basically free extra teams and extra star players. And then the fun happens. So you've got your standard teams, you've got the expanded downloadable teams, you know what you're doing with that stuff, you've got extra star players, it's brilliant. Then you get to turn up Blood Bowl to fun mode. Core Blood Bowl is brilliant, but there is a whole bunch of optional but fun extras for you. So if you're attending a league regularly, if you're going to a tournament, you may want to know about some of this stuff, or if you just want to play a good, fun game of Blood Bowl with some friends, this list is such a good place to start. So Death Zone 2021 was a almanac-sized kind of rulebook for Blood Bowl that had nothing important in there except extra rules. You could make mercenaries, you had rules for giants, you had extra wizards and drummers and stadiums and weather charts. It was just a whole book of awesome extra bits to add to Blood Bowl. So if you want to spice things up, if you just love rules, if you love thinking about stuff, then it is such a good playground. It's my favourite thing that they've released. I love the Spike magazines, but that Death Zone was just amazing. And it has the rules for Blood Bowl 7s in there, which is my personal favourite way to play. And if you're following the channel, you would have just seen us wrap up the final for 7 Super Series. So I think we demonstrated that 7s is a really fun, quick way to play Blood Bowl. It's a shot of Blood Bowl rather than a pint. 45 minutes to an hour if you're new at a game of 7s compared to the 2 to 3 hours for standard Blood Bowl. I think personally it's a brilliant way to play it. And the rules for that are there as well. So Death Zone is just such a fun thing. So if you're enjoying Blood Bowl and you want more Blood Bowl, because more Blood Bowl is more better, then the Death Zone is just the best thing they've done so far. But there's more to it. That's got 7s, that's got extra rules, that's got giants, and then Dungeon Bowl landed as well a couple of years ago. It's a couple of years ago now. And as we all know, Dungeon Bowl takes the madness of Blood Bowl and takes it underground with dungeons and wizards and traps and treasure chests, and it's just a completely brilliant, different way to play. Again, we've got a Dungeon Bowl series on the channel, so if you want to see how Dungeon Bowl plays out, you can go do that and watch our entire series for that. But I love Dungeon Bowl. It is just different. It's just different. The tactics are different. The teams are different. That introduced 8 College of Magic teams, which are kind of mixed team stuff. Technically, you can't use them in standard Blood Bowl, so you don't need to worry about those teams. Some tournaments, like our Bonehead Bowl, will allow it, but actually, it's just another way to play, and that's a brilliant way to do it. And come on, it's dungeons, right? People who like fantasy wargaming, I don't mean to generalize, but actually, you know, if you're into fantasy wargaming, does anything beat the classic feel of a dungeon crawl? You know, crawling through the dungeon, slaying monsters, getting treasure. It's pretty much where we all started, right? Dungeon Bowl kind of takes that and adds Blood Bowl to it, which is just it's just a complete win as far as I'm concerned. So there's Dungeon Bowl, and they've just released the Deathmatch 2022, which is basically a teeny tiny expansion with a teeny tiny rulebook and some models that are already released. So definitely not needed, but good fun to add as well. Then you've got a couple of other things just to wrap up. You've got the referee rules from White Dwarf 466. Again, we've got a Theory Thursday for that. But if you're ever playing Blood Bowl and you're like, man, I really wish I could just blitz the referee into oblivion and then stamp on everyone else, you can do that with those rules. They're quite good fun. And then there are special play cards and the extra rules on the back of the pitches box. So if you pick up a Norse team and you pick up the pitch has got the rules. The Spike's also got the rules for the pitch in there as well. And special play cards are... we don't see them very often because they can be really swingy. So if you want to add something just nice and narrative with a fun little twist to your game, then the special play cards are a really fun thing to do that. But some of them are complete garbage and some of them are completely overpowered. So they are incredibly swingy. I don't think you'll see them very often, but they can be a really fun twist to play to like a casual game or something like that. Just be like, right, we're going to have a few special play cards. You've got them. You've got access to them as an inducement as well. As an inducement, they are risky because some of them are just complete wastes of money. So it's an interesting one. The special play cards can add a fun narrative twist as well. So this list here is just so much that Games Workshop have done a pretty good job collating, bringing together, filling out the rules for making accessible, because Core Blood Bowl is just brilliant. But 7s and Dungeon Bowl and Giants and all this extra stuff just adds so much variety and so much depth to your game that honestly there's no reason to ever play the same game of Blood Bowl twice. Okay, so the other thing to mention is the matched play guide that's just dropped from Games Workshop. And this came out last weekend, and you know, we took a deep dive into it when it turned up and kind of covered the rules. So if you are watching this video because you're thinking, I'd like to get into tournaments for Blood Bowl, then it's probably worth go in and watch in our video on it, because we kind of talk about how it's going to affect teams. When you go to a Blood Bowl tournament, the tournament will give you a breakdown of your tier for your team. So if you're going to run Orcs, they're going to be tier 2. Some tournaments will change that. Some tournaments will add tiers to kind of break it down and add minutiae. Each tournament's different. But within that, you'll get this team. You can build it using this amount of gold, and you do that like you would for a match play game in the rulebook, and then you get this amount of skills or skill points or SPP to spend to upgrade your team. Now, the match play thing has kind of come up with this really middle ground variant that kind of tidies it up, so I would expect to see more tournaments kind of go that way, but ultimately it's not really any different than it used to be. It's still going to be somewhere between 1.1 and 1.2 million, and probably between 4 and 8 skills. The only thing it does change is star players, and a lot of tournaments are kind of taxing or restricting star players at the moment, and I think you will kind of see that when we look in a minute at what's lethal, because star player taxes are starting to be very common, because star players, bang for your buck, they're just really good in this edition, which is great because they're some of the most fun models and fun game things you can do. But if you go to tournaments a lot, if you play competitive Blood Bowl a lot, it can get a bit tiring to play against Chaos Dwarves with Hackflem again. So actually, introducing the rules they have with the Mega Stars in the match play guide is a pretty good thing. Very similar in a way to the NAF World Cup, the unofficial Blood Bowl World Cup that's happening this year. Their rule set is kind of like that as well. So all I'd say is the match play guide has landed. If you're referred to it, if you want to know more about it, then watch a video that we've done on them, or the podcast. I think this weekend will undoubtedly end up talking about it. But otherwise, it's not going to be massively different than any other tournament, which is read your rules pack and get your roster in on time. Okay, so that's everything that's available for Blood Bowl right now, and I cannot stress how little you need. The rulebook. And if you don't want to buy the rulebook, just borrow it from a friend, because they probably won't need it. It's great. Then you've got teams, pick, choose, there's star players, there's special rules, there's expansions, and then we get to look forward to what's coming up next for Blood Bowl. So there's still a couple of star players that are missing. The Bryce the Slice has landed now, or at least has been teased. He's the undead chainsaw player that's on fire. Think kind of Ghost Rider, but green, and instead of a motorbike, he has a motor chainsaw. Works for me. And also, he's not Nicolas Cage, so that's a win for everyone. The other missing piece here is the Grashnak Blackhoof, who is just an absolute monster of a star player. His star player model has yet to be revealed, and the Almanac 2022 stars as well. Now, we've seen Nobler, who is the chainsaw, and we've seen Scrapper Sawhead, who is the pogoer. They went up for pre-order last week, so they'll be kind of starting to come out from Forge World this week. But we will see those. We've not seen any of the other Almanac stars land, however. But I guess before we move on, there are some great third-party alternatives out there. So Grashnak and, you know, Ripper, the Chainsaw star player, the Ball and Chain star player, all the star players you want. If you want Puggy, if you want a Cindy, actually, there's some brilliant third-party ones out there. If you go to our web shop, we are selling prints of Brute Fun's star player models. So if you want to pick up a Puggy and a Cindy or a Grashnak or a Ripper, then that's, I think personally, obviously I would, a pretty easy way to go about getting some of the best sculpts in Blood Bowl for you there. Especially because the Forge World ones are going to be £21 plus postage, and ours are not that price. Anyway, that's your star players. That's what's coming out. That's what we know needs to come out, and then it's going to be on to next teams in Blood Bowl. Now, there were rumours towards the end of last year of the Vampire team having been tested at the same time as the Amazon team. So that somewhat leads us to believe that Vampires will be next in line for regeneration. Now, we were kind of hoping that would happen around about the goodness me, what's Valentine's Day for undead people? Halloween. We were kind of hoping that that would land in Halloween because it's spooky and it works out really well, but I really hope we don't have to wait till Halloween for a vampire team. There's 2 undead teams left to go, where they've got the Tomb Kings and they've got vampires still pending that kind of rejuvenation treatment. So I don't think we're going to probably wait till Halloween for those to land, but vampires were rumoured to be next, and they are rumoured to get a big guy as well, which would be quite a big change up from their roster at the moment, and I think that's probably a good thing, because the vampire roster with just one positional and alignment type does need a little bit something extra. It's a fun roster to run. All you have to do is go grab the Teams of Legend PDF and you can kind of see how they operate. It's a challenging roster, so adding something else, some kind of other incentive to make it seem a lot more fun or a lot more challenging, I think is a really good thing. And a bit of a power boost is probably going to help them as well. Okay, that's everything official from Games Workshop. That's everything that we know is going to be coming up from Games Workshop. But Blood Bowl is a game that's been around for quite a long time and was around while Games Workshop kind of forgot about it and moved on to shinier things. Now, if you are a gamer of my age or older, you will have probably played these kind of games as a youngling and then moved on with your life for 4 or 5 years and then returned to them. Games Workshop basically did that with Blood Bowl. And in those dark times, in the college years, right? Some cool stuff happened. So this is optional, unofficial extras for Blood Bowl that I personally think are definitely worth checking out. The first is our mixed team rules. Now, Bonehead Bowl is our kind of autumn tournament that is all about mixed teams and Dungeon Bowl teams and madness. Mixed teams are so much fun in Blood Bowl, and if you want a pretty balanced, pretty reasonable way to do that, grab the rules from our website, because actually we streamed it. If you want to see some really interesting team combinations, Dark Elf, Undead and stuff like that, it's a really cool thing. We've got 3 games up on the YouTube channel for that one, but mixed teams are so much fun. You get to it definitely is a power boost, but you will never play the same game twice, and the roster building is so much fun. It's just such a cool way to do it. Now, there's Fumble as well, which is a Java-based version of Blood Bowl 2020, and they've got the Secret League on there, so you can kind of log on now and play the Secret League. Now, the Secret League is, I think, maybe 50, maybe more, new teams for Blood Bowl. Fun, random teams, like giant teams, werewolf teams, and some really interesting variants and there's a Snotling team on there from like before, and there's just Troll team. There's some really fun teams on there, Were team, the Ethereal team, and again, it's just more Blood Bowl, different Blood Bowl, and it's a really interesting way to play it. And there's some other great variants out there. You got Street Bowl and Beach Bowl, which are similar to Sevens but with just some slight tweaks. So Street Bowl basically is played on a standard Blood Bowl pitch without the wide zones, and it's played down a street. We're going to be having a look at that one later this year. Beach Bowl is very similar to Sevens, but it's played on the beach. Think about the scene from Top Gun and Top Gun 2. It's that, but with Blood Bowl. And then this one here is very special, 4-player Death Bowl. So Death Bowl is 4-player Blood Bowl, and it is absolute carnage. And we've got a game of Death Bowl 7s coming up very soon. In fact, we're going to be playing next weekend. I've got the pitch downstairs, half built, 4-player Death Bowl 7s. It's an event game, definitely an event game, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And there's also Tunnel Bowl 2, which takes the 11s pitch or a 7s pitch, and you place terrain in there that basically blocks line of sight and provides terrain and avenues that you can't go. So it's a hybrid version of 7s, 11s and Dungeon Bowl without having to have a whole dungeon. So there's a ton of extra thing you can do with Blood Bowl. You don't need the rules, and this is again something that Games Workshop are pretty good at. Even in the match playbook about tournaments, they're like, look, it's your game, come up with some silly rules, have some great fun, and if you want to know how to get started, there's a big old list of it here. So that wraps up what's legal and I guess what's unofficial in the Blood Bowl world. But now we're going to move on to what's lethal. So this is where we have a look at the last period of Blood Bowl since our last episode of Monthly Meta, and put together the stats of which teams are the most popular and which teams are the most winningest. Now, these results are taken from Mike Davies' Tableau page, which is taking the information from the NAF website and putting it together in a way that you can actually see it and use it, which is awesome. So massive thank you to Mike for putting this together and for sharing it for everybody. But the NAF is a player association for Blood Bowl, and they put together game stats basically so that we can have an idea of how you play, whether you win a lot, whether you don't win a lot, which team you're best with, which team you're not best with, and which teams are doing really well. So check out the NAF too. Anyway, let's move on to what's lethal. And the first bit we're going to look at is which teams did the best over the last period, and we're going to go through the teams from bottom to top. Okay, so coming in last place over the last period of Blood Bowl in 29th spot is Halflings. They've dropped 5 points down to 29th and 39% win rate, and only slightly above them is Ogres here at 40%. So as we start seeing star player tax applied to tournament builds, it's not surprising that Halflings, which basically in a tournament setting without star players, you just can't buy enough stuff. And Ogres have been doing really well in tournaments because they can lean on Griff. And to be quite honest with you, Halflings kind of lean on Griff heavily too, or a mixture of Carla and some of the other star players. So having that star player tax come in has potentially hurt their win rates and made them drop to the last 2 spots. Vampires, who we talked about a little bit more a bit earlier, have dropped 4 spots down to 27 at 42% win rate. Only 121 games recorded for them since our last episode, which is not surprising as the rules kind of need updating and there's no team available to get straight away from Games Workshop. But we got a few climbers next. 26th spot and 25th spot, both up 2 places. We've got Black Orcs crawling out of the bottom 3 for the first time in a while. A 43% win rate, and Chaos there up a little bit at 44%. Goblins doing surprisingly well for a tier 3 build, up 5 spots to 24. Now 45% win rate brings us into that 10% Goldilocks zone that we're kind of looking for, and given that Goblins kind of started the season at 35% win rate, it's nice to see them increasing. And it's not surprising. We've got Bomber, Dribble, Snot, and now we're going to start seeing some builds involving Ripper and Scrapper, Sorehead, and potentially Nobbler as well. So those Goblin stars arriving have given the Goblins a bit of an edge. Up 3 spots to 23 is Nurgle with a 45% win rate. We've got Humans dropping 1 spot to 22, and at 21 we've got Chaos Renegades who actually dropped 3 points here, down to 46% for the last period of Blood Bowl. So that's our bottom 9 teams, as have Snotlings. So Snotlings are the best performing tier 3 team. Even with star player tax coming in, there's definitely going to be an element of the fact that they have access to Hackblem, who is the best and the cheapest of the best star players available. Snotlings can run a really low budget too, so even with kind of a star player tax, they're going to be able to take Hackblem, and Snotlings are just sneaky good. I've had a load of success with them, and they're a really fun roster to play. So good to see them in the kind of not quite the top half, but definitely higher than you'd expect a tier 3 team to be. Down 4 spots, Necromantic at 48% win rate. 17th, staying the same, is Lizardman. Now Lizardman there with 400 plus games recorded, continuing to be a really popular team. And what we see here is the more popular the team is, not necessarily the lower the win rate, but kind of the more balanced the win rate becomes. And we'll kind of see that as we get to the top of the charts. There are some really great coaches who really know their teams, and they're some of the only players playing them. So 16th spot, down 10 in the last period, is Dwarf here. So Dwarf teams are falling all the way down to 16 at a 49% win rate, which is absolutely fine. I can't really explain that one. Dwarves have been really solid. Nothing has really happened, and if anything, the arrival of Amazons, you would expect that well, just entirely dodge-covered team would fall victim to Dwarves and give them some easy wins, but we've not seen a massive uptick in the games played by Amazons. So potentially, Dwarves are struggling to find some dodge targets at the moment. Down 2 spots to 15, we've got Norse at 50% win rate, and then we start getting to the good teams, to the teams that win more than they lose. However, in the last period, Tomb Kings have dropped 10 spots. They're still 52% for the last period, but they were up there in the top 5 last time round, and they're kind of coming back down to earth, which is fine because they're still winning more games than they're losing. Down 5 spots, we've got Slann, my boys. Only 86 games played with Slann over the last period. They're such a fun team. I really hope they get brought back into Games Workshop proper in one way or another. The roster, the theme, kind of the execution, where everyone's kind of got pogo stick, is such a good way. It's just a really fun alternative kind of style. That's a really, really interesting build. Now, we've got a first riser here in the top half of the table, up 4 spots. Yes, we've got Skaven. Okay, so really pleased to see this. 317 games is not a small amount of games either, so Skaven are doing a brilliant job there, climbing up 4 points. And down 2, we've got Chaos Dwarves Again, probably falling victim to somehow a reduction in dodge teams. So that takes us to our top 10 for the last period. We've got Wood Elves dropping 3 spots down to 10 at 53%. Orcs climbing into the top 10 for the first time in a while there. They got demoted to tier 2, which is giving them slightly better skill access, and potentially we're starting to see a bit of an uptick there, especially as they get to add Bomber to their arsenal too. So Orcs in a good position, up 14 spots this period. Imperial Nobility, more coaches starting to use them. They are so good once you learn how to use that stand, firm, fend combination of ground control. Imperial Nobility are brilliant, and their blitzers are so much fun, even if their thrower is not the best thrower in the game, unlike Skaven. Dark Elves down 2, still in the top 10, 7 there at 55% win rate, up 5 spots to 6. Elven Union, this one is interesting. High Elves dropped 3 spots to 5, so staying in top 5, 57% win rate. And this is just something I'm so happy about. OWA, the last period, up 11 spots, and I quite thought they were punching at 15th. Now into the top 5. They're 4th place for Old World Alliance over the last period. Again, another tier 2 team there. They might be netting a little bit extra in the way of cash and skills, and they're making it work. Only 141 games played there, so you've got OWA and High Elves there, and Elven Union all performing really well with only a smidgen over 100 games each. So we've got some great coaches playing some great games with some great teams there. So OWA up 11 spots. Amazon sticking around 3rd, no shift there. Not very many games played with them either, but 59% win rate, and also 59% win rate, up 8 spots on the last period. Number 2 team, Undead. Proper Undead. Doing proper Undead things. Nice to see them kind of return to power. And unsurprisingly, Underworld are still sticking around at the number 1 spot, win percentage of 60%, but it's a really interesting mix there at the top of the charts. Okay, so that's the teams who've performed the best over the last period. Now we're going to quickly blitz through the popularity. We'll see what's the lowest, we'll see what's the highest, so you can kind of get an idea of what you're likely to face if you take on a tournament. So bottom spot 29 is Slann, Elven Union, Vampires, High Elves, Old World Alliance are the bottom 5 teams in Blood Bowl. Slann, not even 100 games. Wood Elves, Renegades, Amazons and Nurgle are the bottom half as well. A bit of shuffling around, but no major things there. High Elves, even though they've dropped a lot, they've only registered 130 games in the last period as well. Then we can swing over to the middle zone. At 20, we've got Nobility, Snotlings, Chaos, Underworld, actually falling a bit there. So Underworld, 194 games, down to 17th. Halfling, a little bit of a drop. Ogre's a bit more of an increase. That's potentially with the Goblin Stars landing and becoming a bit more ubiquitous, and also because ogres are just better. Bonehead podcast. Khorne dropping a little bit. Goblins up. There you go. You're seeing that surge. And dwarves way less popular now, dropping out of the top 10 heavily. Which does bring us to the top 10 of the most popular teams in Blood Bowl right now. We got Black Orcs there, 272 games, up 7 spots to the top 10. Undead sticking around but dropping 6 places. Chaos Dwarves, Skaven and Necromantic all staying in the same spot. Humans, Norse and Dark Elves all got a little bit more popular there, kind of well within that 300 game range. And the top 2 teams have swapped places but stayed the top 2 teams. Orcs, 478 games, and Lizardmen, 423. So they're literally sticking around there. So you can be pretty sure to see some Orc and Lizardmen teams. And Lizardmen are brilliant with a few skills added. Orcs, where they're sneaky tier 2, are actually a really effective roster as well. Dark Elves, Norse, Human, Necro, Skaven, Chaos Dwarf and Undead. All very popular teams. Oh, and don't forget your Black Orcs too. Okay, so that wraps up what's legal, what's lethal. Hopefully that's been helpful, so that if you're coming back to Blood Bowl, just getting started or just checking in, you can see what's happened in the last month. And you can see what you're likely to play against if you are headed towards a tournament. Leagues are very different. They're very fun. But tournament and competitive Blood Bowl is a great place to be. And even though there's some teams there sneaking outside of that Goldilocks range, any team can beat any other at any given point. So it's a lot of good fun. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think of the top 10 teams in this list and whether or not you're expecting to see something different. And I'm going to wrap up, and we'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blocking. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the channel even further, please like and subscribe. It really does help us out. Or come join us on YouTube Members or in Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to some content, some loot, early access to basically everything we do, as well as regular competitions. Or you can pick up some Bonehead Podcast loot either on our website at boneheadpodcast.com. We've got the Dungeon Bowl things, we've got tokens and stuff like that, or on our Spreadshirt site as well. Everything you do just helps us make more content and hopefully do it of better quality. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Happy blocking.